for the nerds. This is for the brainiacs. This what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back. You ain't gonna touch me. You not gonna do nothing. You are not above me. I bet you wish you was me. I know it, I know.
What is poppin', everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast. Well, you know, it's me and my only friends, which includes and is not limited to my boy Tortu.
I don't have my maracas.
Don't worry, I got you.
What are you doing, man? The bit had a very timely, natural death.
Yeah.
Let it fucking die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we came back. You guys were here. You know, I just had to do it. I couldn't help.
Question: what number episode is this?
325.
Does this count as a new season because of the week off?
That. You know, I was thinking about that.
We also lost a cast member.
We did. Well,
wow. We
many cast members throughout.
He's still with us in spirit.
RIP.
Only one that matters is Chauncey.
Wow.
Yeah, he left
Shout
us a
out
letter.
to Melissa.
He says, to Only Friends fam. I don't know where you got such good handwriting, but
Impeccable.
thank you for letting me be your co-host for a while. Although I didn't get to contribute as much as I would have liked. I got plenty of neck scratches and kisses along the way. I'll be watching from England. XOXO. Gossip Girl. No, Chauncey.
Michelle would have loved that.
My
my
heart,
absolutely love
my heart
that.
goes on.
Oh, Chauncey.
Dun, dun, dun. Can we get the music?
No. Stop trying to get us demonetized.
Yeah. Don't worry, his whistling out of tune is not going to get us demonetized.
It's
We
like
literally just lost half of our viewership.
Have you seen like the recording of like the flute where it's really bad? That's
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah, that is what that is.
We saw a phone number too, but it was just Guapos. I thought Chauncey left us his personal number, but he didn't.
I can't believe you didn't fucking call it on there. I'm so mad about that. That would have been so great. Just see fucking Guapo's phone.
There's a.
Look at the card. It's a cat.
It is a cat.
It's a cat.
It's not an orange cat.
No, it's a tuxedo cat.
It is a tuxedo cat. There's a small homage to
Whoa!
Chauncey over
I
here.
didn't even see
Oh,
that.
I saw it.
Who did Marley make that?
Yeah. Well, Chauncey made it, but yeah.
Chauncey made
He'll
it.
be with us forever.
Wow,
Yeah.
I'm in there.
In spirit.
I feel so honored to be on that. Oh man, look, there's only 4 pictures.
There is only 4 pictures.
You're
You and I
randomly
are on
going to
it.
put that picture in your lap throughout the podcast?
No.
You know, for old time's sake.
I will miss Chauncey. I will not miss my face being itchy the entire fucking time I do this show.
You allergic to cats?
No, he just sheds so
He does.
much.
Yeah.
It was just
Means he
hair.
loves
Every time
you.
I sit in this chair, like the back of me is just covered in hair.
Yeah.
Also, for the new season, if I do have these shorts, you guys can blame the co-host.
All right, look.
Psychic.
I thought that those shorts would cover your balls.
They do.
Pretty close.
I was.
Wait,
It
he's
depends
sitting
on
is
the angling, you know?
Yeah.
was
Landon
Wait,
walked
Let's do it.
upstairs.
Spread those legs. Let's do a test.
No, I don't want to
Landon
test
walked
it.
upstairs.
Guapo,
and
be
Berkey
ready with the
said-
sensor.
And Berkey said, "Where's your belly button?"
I was convinced he was wearing them above his waist.
I
He was not.
I saw the short size when he gave them to me, and I saw an M for medium. I was like, oh, this is gonna go over so well.
I mean, they're goal shorts, man. You know.
I
Work your way
like
into
them.
them.
What are you supposed to fucking lose 4 inches or something on your height?
On his waist, not a. No, that's not how medium, large, and XL work. They don't make them according to length. They
Just
make them according to
size.
waist.
Yeah, I've been trying to put. It's crazy. I've been trying to put weight on, but I've
They're
stayed
not that
at
much
the
shorter
same
than mine.
weight. Yeah, but I'm
Yes.
taller than you.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are.
You started wearing shorts more often. I've been seeing it.
That's because he's got those olive legs, baby.
I know.
I'm not blaming him.
You know when I wear shorts? When it's 115 outside.
You've been starting to wear more shorts more often. Well, it is now middle of July.
It is hot.
End of July.
It is hot in these streets.
It's been rough. I gotta tell you. I went to Daytona for a week, thinking I'd get a break from the heat. And I got to tell you.
You went to Florida to get a break from the heat.
I got to tell you, 100 with 100% humidity is not much different than 115 with no humidity.
It's
No.
true. It's worse.
But second for 60K is fine.
Second for 60K was nice. Well, 53, but yeah. More importantly, I didn't let him do anything. He did it himself. But having a student win the whole thing for his biggest lifetime score, 80K,
Amazing.
priceless.
Yeah.
You are the
Shout
ultimate
out.
bridesmaid.
Charlie.
Yeah, I mean, we knew how this was going to end.
No.
You were never gonna win.
Never gonna win.
Never. No chance.
I need this narrative to fucking die if our swap is going to be on, man. I can't take the second places. You need to win a tournament. The difference between 53 and 86?
Great news was.
At 500?
Great news was I didn't let Landon have any of this one.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah, all yourself.
Yeah. We free rolled the event, and I was like, you know what? No, not this one, big guy. This one's all me.
Actually, you didn't even say anything.
Yeah, I did.
That was when we were talking about 510.
Same thing. They both apply.
Technically not really.
He let you know when he was
tournament.
four-handed.
Yeah. Yeah. When we got to the final table, chip leader had 40 bigs. I had 26 and was fourth in chips. So it was like a big cluster. But then I won like 3 of the first 6 hands.
I'm not gonna lie, I was watching that stream and it looked like it was designed for you to win.
I know. It really did. I had such good distribution early.
Ace 10 versus ace 9. Board comes ace 9 3, turn 10. Somehow goes check on flop. It's like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Scam.
See ya.
I might have jinxed you. I was in San Diego and just like literally walking around Coronado, and I knew it was on. I'm like, oh, let me pull it up, see how he's doing. And I pulled it up directly as you get it in, and you were 3-handed, and you got it in with ace king versus king 7.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Versus Alex.
Yeah, Alex, and he made a straight, I think maybe.
Yeah.
He did make a
He
straight.
did.
I was like, oh, he's
Relax.
still in. All right, I'll check back in
He
later.
won an ace 5 ace 7 versus queens.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you gonna do? You got to win some of those. I mean,
Yeah. That's how you get second.
That the man. Here's the thing. Look, like obviously, you can't put an emphasis on like what good or bad things happened, because it's just the deck being the deck and whatever happens. But that wasn't even like corrective variance. That man had beat me 7s versus my aces. He would have just been out. I would have had an overwhelming chip lead, and we may never have looked back. So it's like me winning with the ace 7 versus queens. Yeah, it was worth some money at that point, but I wouldn't have had 12 blinds had I not gotten clipped to begin with.
Yeah.
That's the nature of tournament variance. But the thing is that with 9 left, I thought, okay, good chance I finish top 3 here. Then I ran hot the first orbit, and I was like, I'm going to fucking win this thing for sure. I have 60 big blinds. These guys are in trouble. Then we got down to 5-handed after I lost the aces versus 7s and then a couple others, leaving me with 12 bigs. And I was like, I'm probably going to get 4th. I'm just trying to wait this man out right here.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like the start of day 2 when you had a bunch, and then like Tom started texting you, and he's like, "I started this day with like 300K, and Matt had nothing." And then Matt runs it up, and then he's gonna torch it all.
Yeah, so that was kind of crazy. I had 1.3 million at 800K big blind, where
800 big blind.
8K big blind.
That's
8K
what
big
I
blind.
meant, yeah.
And the final table average was 2.2 million.
Yeah.
So I had like 6.5% of the chips in play
Like 80 left or something.
with like 80 people left.
Wow.
I final tabled with 2.6 million.
Yeah.
So I went like all the way back down from 1.3 all the way back down to like 300K.
How much ICM consideration were you using at the final table?
Only one spot, and it actually probably ensured that I got exactly second. So with 3 left, Alex was short. He had, I think, like 7 or 8 big blinds, maybe 10 at the most. And I had like 25. And
What'd Charlie have?
Charlie had like 45 or 50. He had like twice my stack. But he was actually playing pretty snug. Like he folded king 8 off on the button. He was just like he allowed this to go on longer than it should have. And maybe not. Obviously, it could have went another way. But like he just wasn't putting any pressure on Alex at all, and it was allowing Alex to kind of like freely pick up some chips here and there, and keep himself around. But this spot came up where he opened the button, and he had been open pretty tight. So like I thought he had a decent hand. Alex folded the small blind, leaving himself with like 8 bigs or something like that. And I have king queen of spades in the big. So obviously I have a defend with ICM, debatable if I have a 3-bet or not without. I call and it comes 7 high 2 spades. So like, I don't know, 7, 6, 3, 2 spades and a diamond, I think. And, I would just have a check raise here, a very clear check raise.
Get it in.
Possible get it in spot, like whatever. We don't care. We have 2 overs and a flush draw. This board hits us harder than it hits him. He's going to have to show up with an overpair here, yada, yada, yada. But because Alex only has 8 bigs, I have to check call. And what ends up happening is Charlie flops a gutty with ace 5 of diamonds, bets, in a spot where, like, you know, he'd have to be more mindful.
I actually
with
remember this. I saw this hand.
Yeah, he'd
right.
have to be more mindful without ICM. He can't really be freely betting this board. So now he bets. I can't check raise, call.
Right.
Turns the jack of diamonds. He gets to bet again because now he picked up the backdoor flush draw. I'm resigned to calling again. River brick, check. He wins with ace high.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is very frustrating.
This is sad for me.
It left me with like 12 bigs going into heads up instead of, you know, just picking that pot up on the flop. I mean, I don't know if we would have got it in on the flop or not. I doubt it. He said he would just fold it to the check raise, which I kind of believe him.
He opened button.
Yeah.
You had how many?
25.
With king 10s.
King, queen of spades.
King, queens. No, I think you always call.
Yeah.
Your hand's too good.
Yeah.
I think you jam like jack 10 suited.
Well, with ICM, I can't do anything but call.
With king queen, yeah.
I don't even think I can jam jack 10.
Oh, of course you can, because like you just get queen jack to fold. It does very well. Like you retain equity.
Yeah, but like Alex is just gonna bust. He has no big blinds. It's just kind of brutal.
Yeah.
The jumps were like relatively big too. I think third place was like 31, so it was like almost a 20K jump from third to second.
Yeah.
And then the jump from second to first was actually smaller.
We're gonna keep saying it, man. Tournaments are Ponzi schemes.
Yeah,
They are.
Yeah.
But you know what? Got to get off on the top.
Tournaments are hard, man.
It's wild because first is so much in comparison to second.
Yeah, kind of.
Like, I mean, it's
53 to 81. It's not that much.
in a buy-in of ABI of 500.
Well, yeah, it's a lot of buy-ins. There'll always be a lot of buy-ins.
Yeah, just seems like a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
Like, I feel like there should be more.
You're just not figuring this out. The tournaments are top heavy.
No. I just mean in the sense of like the difference between ninth being normally like 10% of first.
Yeah.
Just seems so ridiculous when you think about how many pay slots you're 8 away from making 10 times more money than you have
Yeah.
9. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
like
true.
Maybe ninth should be a little bit more, or like first should be less.
I don't remember what the actual payout structure was 9 to 1. I just remember like it was really important for me to get top 3.
So you want to like flatten out the final table a little bit?
Maybe it's like flatten out, like take some off of first, and then give some more to like the middle tier, like the 27 down, final 3 table
Maybe
down
like-
type shit.
So like ninth would be what, 1/7 of first, something like that.
Something like that. But like at the same, it's a weird thing to think about when it comes to the structural difference between pay slots, as like, because normally it seems like the standard strategy is to give podium finishes most of the money.
Yeah.
Like the
top
jump between
threes. Top threes are like that's what you're aiming for every time you play a tournament, right?
Right, but now if you're playing a tournament with like that, call it 2,000 people, top 3 is like one and never.
It's hard.
Yeah, there's
And
some
there's
correction.
500 people.
I mean,
It's
we've talked about this ad nauseum. There's a lot of corrections I think that could be made for large field events.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I say it is strictly for large field events, right? Like small field high rollers and stuff. Of course,
Well,
payouts
there
make more
have
sense that
been
way.
some corrections we've seen throughout the years. They started paying 15% instead of 10. They started paying like, you know, sub 15% to first.
Yeah.
It used to be standard.
It used to be like infinite for WPT first places, right? Like on TV and
Not
stuff.
just WPT, WSOP back in the day too. Like it was just industry-wide standard that they paid 20% to first.
That is insane.
No matter like what the buy-in, like look at the Jamie Gold year.
Oh my God. I
Right?
remember some of the pay jumps from some of these tournaments way back when.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, the Jamie Gold year I think had like 85 million in the prize pool, maybe a little bit less.
something like that. Yeah.
And it paid like almost 15% to first.
Man, it is kind of
Massive.
cool. It is fun from a tournament, like from a gameplay standpoint of you need to play to win.
No, it's not. That's not though, because if 1,000 people take the mindset of they need to play to win, all that means is that like variance is going to be a bigger dictator in like what the final outcome is.
Well, yeah, it seems nice, but
It's a nice handicap for those who otherwise are ICM conscious. But again, as we've demonstrated, and like as the models show, the ICM conscious player will always have a higher bottom line.
Yeah.
Right? So like they may win the event itself less often, but if they get to put in any amount of volume in said event, their hourly is just going to be significantly higher.
What? Yeah, well, that's kind of why mystery binders are so cool.
Yeah,
It's
agreed.
because it lets people have access to the prize pool in other instances where they
Totally
should.
agree.
It's more of a gamble fest, but I do like what Triton
No,
did.
I think it's great.
I think it's great. No, I like the gamble.
What was unique about Triton?
They did the bounty ceremony after the tournament was over.
Oh, so everybody just cashed their bounties in at
You
once.
get your bounties for the day. So I guess maybe the bounty value would stay the same.
So you
It's
don't know
consistent,
you don't
yes.
know what's left at the bounty coming down to the final stretch.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like no
Which
one's pulled
really would-
the big bounty yet.
Which really would impact how people play, obviously.
It does in some
No, it
regards,
matters a lot.
Like
Yeah,
if you
it
take
has
away
to.
the big bounty, then
The big
bounties
bounty
are
got
worth
pulled
less.
with 18 left in the 10K, and it changed the play immediately
Of course.
from chip EV to ICM.
Yeah.
Like
sure.
drastically altered the state of gameplay.
What do you think about that structure versus the pull when you want?
I like both. I think it's cool to just run
Depending
both.
on like if it's a high roller or not.
No.
They're just they're good in different ways.
Yeah, I just think they're good in different ways.
Yeah.
Like I love the sweat of the bounties like getting plucked.
It's kind of like a race.
Yeah, but it's also like you have to still have some in-game strategy changes, right? Like as big bounties get pulled and the bounty is actually worth less and less and less, you have to alter. And the other thing is like you're never going to realize your true EV. So the bounty prize pool is a little bit like a lottery, right? Like no matter what, you'll never realize you'll never pull effectively your EV. You're always going to be above it or below it.
Correct.
Just based off the distribution of what the bounties are.
Someone
if you pull nothing but mins, you're going to be obviously below. If you pull nothing but above, you're going to be way above. And if you pull some mix, you're going to be slightly above or slightly below.
Yeah.
I think I pulled all 10Ks and a couple of 5Ks when I pulled mine, and I ended up being like ever so slightly above.
Yeah. It feels bad though, because it feels like
bounty.
opportunity cost missed, where you don't spike the big one.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you want to attach some emotion to it, but the whole point that I'm trying to get at is that I think it's fun to kind of like work those problems out in real time.
Yeah, I think
and realize how much you should be going for it.
Yeah, I think it's fun either way. Like,
yeah,
because like if I think the strategic part about it, like if you understand, like they're getting pulled as we go, like your strategy changes on the fly every time, almost like
a little bit. It's not as significant as you would think until like the
bigger ones.
The thing is
top
that
5 bounties.
The thing is, I would discourage a little bit of like what the WSOP does, where so much of the bounty prize pool is locked up into 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, it seems like there should be more. Man,
there has to be way more parity in the bounties.
Yeah, the marketing aspect I understand for sure.
Yeah, they definitely.
Okay, but like for instance, the $1 million bounty or the $1 million bounty.
You didn't need 2 millions.
Right,
definitely didn't need
when you collect enough to have a second $1 million bounty, you should just have like a dozen 50K bounties. And then a couple more 100K bounties or whatever. That money 100% should be
spread
distributed.
it out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
they just
now,
want, like you said, like Landon said, it's a marketing thing. They just want to be like, we got another $1 million.
They did it for the Million
but
Maker,
it's a
too.
huge change in strategy now, because what ends up happening, no matter how you distribute it, you can have all of the money in one single bounty, right?
Now that would be cool.
And every bounty is still going to be.
It's like min bounties or like Giga Million.
No. Not, say there's 100 bounties and 99 of them are 0 and 1 of them is $1 million.
Yeah, could you imagine
the
that?
the EV of pulling a bounty is still going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's still going to be $10,000.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't matter how you distribute the bounty pool. The quote unquote EV of winning a bounty is theoretically going to be the same. The issue is that when you don't distribute that money out throughout a myriad of bounties, now once the big bounty is pulled, the strategy alters drastically, because now the EV of every bounty is not the same. It's drastically altered. Whereas if, say, the big bounty, instead of being $1 million, is 100,000, you would have to pull all of the 100,000s, right?
Right.
Like,
Instead of having 2 million, you have, even if you made it 10 100,000s extra.
Yes.
Versus that 2 million type thing.
Right. Now, if you pull 1 million out, well, there's still a whole other million.
Yeah.
In the prize pool, so the EV of the bounties changes a little bit.
Right.
And
It's
your
like you
desire to go for it changes a little bit.
Not like there's one and then once it's gone.
Right.
Like you can still
Changes
have your
everything.
marketing shtick.
It's the deal or no
and
deal
You can give
situation.
people money.
Right. Like in the 10K one that I played, they had a 250, and then the next closest was a 50, and then they had 225Ks.
Did they have 100K or no?
Maybe there was
I think
100K.
Marafa pulled
Yeah,
100K.
there might have been 100K. Yeah. But anyway, once the 250 was pulled,
It's like Jesus Christ.
the average EV of the bounty went down so drastically, because that ended up being like a quarter of the bounty prize pool or so.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less, maybe like 20%.
Yeah.
It just immediately changed. And then at that point, the 100K was also gone. So
yeah, and then you lost in the tournament because now you're not playing the Gamble Fest anymore.
that's not why I lost,
know.
but it definitely altered strategy a lot, where it's like, how ICM aware, because at that point, a lot of non-ICM aware players could be deep in the event, because they're making good decisions based off the bounties.
Right. You're just incentivized to gamble.
The only
Yeah.
thing to really consider is what the average bounty is worth, right? It's
That's the only thing you really can consider in theory.
Right.
Yeah. If the big bounty gets pulled, they're all worth less. If they're,
Of course.
if all the small
Once the big
ones-
bounty gets pulled, the average just drops so dramatically that there's a huge change in strategy.
Yeah, you're right.
Whereas-
It's very deal or no deal esque.
Yeah.
Which is such a fun game. Like I like adding these sub games or
Into the
sub missions, if you will, into the overall gameplay. Like
For sure.
I like that aspect of tournament structures. Like you're able to play with the structure so much, where you can add these side missions that are worth dollars. You can't really do that in cash. I mean, we do it a little bit with like the Deuce to 7 bounty
Yeah.
or stand-up game, stuff like that. But what ends up happening in almost all of those scenarios is that they generate action based off of the punishment, not the profit. What is going on?
It's a deal or no deal music.
No, that is not deal or no deal. That's
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Wants to
Hey man,
be
it's
a-
close.
Shout out to the champ, by the way.
Yeah.
25K Triton.
He did it.
Mystery
no,
bounty?
40K.
Espen.
40K.
40K.
That's just a strange number. 40?
Well, I imagine 10 or 15 goes to the bounty.
So it's a
prize pool.
25K tournament plus 15 in the prize.
Probably.
Very nice, sir.
What do you think about like bounty prize pool versus normal prize pool? Like half, 75-25?
With mystery bounties, I don't care. With traditional bounties, stop running them. Just stop running these events. They're so stupid.
Oh, you mean like the $300 consistent bounty?
Yeah, just stop running them.
Just always make it a mystery bounty. If it's a bounty, it's a mystery
It
bounty.
has to be because like
Yeah.
Man, mysteries
I
are
don't-
so fun.
I don't think people understand this, but effectively you really alter. And to be fair, maybe I guess the argument for the traditional bounty is that it's an indirect way of what we advocate for of a more level middle of the pack payout. Because what ends up happening is actually maybe that's not even true, but basically let's say 1/3 of the prize pool is dedicated to a traditional bounty, and every time you knock somebody out, you get 1/10 of the buy-in back or 1/5 of the buy-in back, whatever.
Just decreases so much.
So what ends up happening is that entire prize pool is set aside for people who knock people out. But the eventual winner of the event, or the person who knocks the most people out of the entire event, will at most knock out like 1% of the field. And that's probably super high. It's probably closer to like 0.5%
I
of
mean,
the
that's
field.
probably way too high if you're looking at a WSOP type tournament.
Yeah, right. So it's like you're only going to get access. So where you have access to, let's say the winner gets 15% of the prize pool, they're only going to get 0.5% of the bounty pool. Right? Maybe less. So what ends up happening is effectively in a traditional bounty event, you're paying normal rake on both prize pools, but like 40% of the field is being paid some amount of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Maybe even a little bit more. It might even be
Right.
close to like half the field is getting paid some amount of money. And, it basically just makes it like very undesirable to play as anybody who does this for any sort of hourly or work, right? Like it's great for Rex because they're just often going to get some portion of their buy-in back.
Yeah.
But like for the pros, they're just terrible structure.
I wonder if there's a way to do mystery bounties in a satellite, right?
Go
Where
on.
it's like almost like you pull a bounty and maybe, like it could be like a zero, or like a all or nothing type thing where you pull a bounty and it's either zero or maybe it's just the seat,
Oh, right.
right? Something like
Man,
that.
I
So
saw
like you could
some,
like bust somebody like early in the event, but then you already have the bounty that's the seat. I mean I
It's
just
probably
thought of this,
possible.
Yeah.
You'd be eliminating two people at a
Well,
time.
or you have like some form of, at least for WSOP or like big festivals, it seems kind of cool to have like a mystery bounty satellite tournament where like you have different, if you knock people out at a certain point, you can win different prizes to different tournaments. Like you might win a seat to like a 1100 prime or a 10K.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't know how to do it, right? I'm not that guy.
Well, it would just have to be, it would be based off of buy-in and prize pool. So, like, if
Yeah.
you get 1,000 people for $1,000, you have $1 million prize pool. Now, it would be up to you to determine if you wanted to pay out 100 bounties. You would basically just be figuring out. So, what's the average bounty at that point? 10K. So you could distribute it all the way from like 25K down to a 500.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on adding in the bounty prize pool? Like they do this on GG. They'll have like in some of this, it's like a Saturday secret. It's kind of the thing where you can win a bounty prize into like the 10K Super Millions, where like you play the 1K mystery bounty.
They're just adding, right? Like that's just them basically splashing the prize pool.
I think they might be adding. But what are your thoughts on them doing that live? Like you can win a seat to a 50K or an 100K.
I mean, it's super dope, but like where are they pulling the money from? Right?
Yeah.
It just matters. If it's coming out of the prize pool, then it's less attractive. Because if I'm playing the $500 Colossus, I'm happy that they add these massive prize bounties. But if, Joe Random is playing a $500 Colossus and he wins a 50K high roller seat, that's not the blessing that it appears to be.
Or like there's probably have to be some form of way where you can like maybe give the seats up for less cash dollars. You see what I'm saying?
I understand. But
like if it's like you get a seat to a 50K, but instead of playing a tournament, you can take 25K cash.
Then where's the other 25K go?
It goes back to WSOP.
I'm sure they would love that.
So if you want to do this WSOP, I'll take 10%.
I'm pretty sure Landon just got put on the biz dev board.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, that might be a fun idea. I would love to be part of a biz dev board.
But you are part of a company, you asshole.
I knew he would say that.
Asshole.
Do your fucking course.
Oh, you're a bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy.
your course.
Don't boo this man. Don't
His
boo
course
this
is
man.
on backgammon, so.
Oh yeah, backgammon course.
Yeah.
Backgammon's so fun.
You and Gus Hansen going to be battling.
Me,
Anybody
Gus
wants to
Hansen and
learn how to
Galen.
play backgammon,
Man,
that'll be the next course.
I saw
coming out on Software IT.
Galen went to Monte Carlo for the World Championships,
Yeah.
and in like the Open, like one of like a bigger like open field events, he got top 4. And all the commentators were like kind of giving him shit in some spots where it's like, oh, I would never do this, and I would never do this.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it in a way until later, where it was like, oh, he's gambling a lot. But gambling is good when you're playing versus someone better than you.
Yeah.
And then I would message Galen about it, and then he'd message me back and be like, yeah, when they told me I was wrong, me doing this play was like way better than the play that they thought it was.
Yeah.
Which kind of made me think, oh, is there edge? Like, if people have been playing this game for so long, but like missed these things.
I mean, it's just like poker, right? Like anybody who is just trying to intuit strategy, they get close, but they just never get to max EV because they're not supercomputers.
You would love backgammon, by the way.
Probably.
You really would.
I mean, okay.
Well,
I believe you.
We all love strategy games. So
Yeah,
it's just
it's a
like
good one.
any kind of strategy game you put in front of us, we'll probably enjoy.
Well,
I'm
there's-
in.
I hear there's a level of gamble to it. So
There's
that
a ton
seems-
of gamble in.
Yeah.
There's
Even better.
There's a cube in it, and like if you have an advantage, like certain equity advantage, you can double the amount of money you're playing for, and then you can like redouble as well. So like if you have a favorable position, you double, but then like they get lucky and run good, they can redouble. And then like if it switches again, you can play for like up to 64 times the amount.
I feel like
original
I'd
game
need to
is.
study up on Kelly criteria to get this right.
Yeah, but like this is a very
when
you game.
when do you double or not double? I just double too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you would love it.
Yeah, sure. Sounds like a good way of going broke.
You would love it. Plus, there's actual strategy. Like people try to compare themselves versus the computer because it is a solved game.
Oh, okay.
It's not like poker in the sense of maybe you're making a mistake because of ranges or whatever.
Yeah.
Every single move is technically correct.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
you can play the AI and it'll give you feedback like same move, blunder or whatever, and save move means you're playing effectively like computer strat.
That's how I feel about Connect 4.
Yeah.
It's so stupid. This is such a dumb mindset to have, and maybe I don't have it anymore because it's been a decade since I've really played in any competitive way. But Connect 4 is solved. You can learn the strategy relatively quickly, and a big group of us used to play it maybe 10 or 15 years ago, like Mercier, Fildo, Brent, all those guys. And I don't know if Jay looked up the solve or not, but like he intuited what the solve was. And by playing with him and watching him enough, I was able to kind of reverse engineer what the solve was, looked it up, double checked, knew what the solve was, etc. For whatever reason, there's something, at least back then when I was playing, there was something very intoxicating about playing somebody who didn't know that the game was solved or like what the proper strategy was.
Yeah, of course.
And you're just getting to execute
Beat
every
them
single time
yeah.
and just like luring them into these traps where you have a double move to win.
I mean, these are the same people that think they have an edge in like tic-tac-toe.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that's what you used to do like in first grade in tic-tac-toe. Once you realize the solve and then someone didn't, you just beat them every time.
but that one's like really easy to figure out quickly
I
that
know,
you're
but
getting fucked.
when you're in first grade, it's like people don't, no one's thinking on that level. But once you do,
But like the
and
Connect
nobody
4,
else
the
is,
Connect 4,
yeah.
you just kind of give them a side eye. You're like, no.
I will say it does. There is a really nice, like it's a good feeling when you can intuit a solver strat because the solver strat it has to be heuristically based.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this move makes sense for these reasons. The solve won't tell you what they are.
Right. With Connect 4, it's literally just like looking ahead a couple of moves and seeing how to set up a double win. And eventually, like, once you start thinking along those lines, you realize it's just a grid and it's math based, and then we can just like execute a simple formula to arrive at this.
Man, that's what makes poker so fun, though, is that you
can't
never
do
have
that.
perfect information. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Poker is nowhere near as cool as it is if you have perfect information every time.
No, it would be the deadest game on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, even to some degree, I think that's the issue with limit hold'em, is that with the fixed bet sizings,
It's pretty close to.
yeah, with the fixed bet sizings and just like pot odds being what they are, the game gets less interesting street by street. Right, but it becomes closer and closer to
poker would be,
finality street
poker would
by
be
street.
pretty much chess, right? Like,
Well,
essentially.
Sort of. You're saying if like we had perfect information? Yeah. No, because chess wouldn't. There would still be the element of chance in poker,
That's true.
right?
True. Yeah.
Chess lacks that.
Yeah,
Right.
you still don't know. Like, you don't have perfect information of turn and river distributions.
Right.
Where on a chessboard, you just see everything you will ever need
Yeah.
to see. But
I mean,
so-
we could ask Russ Hamilton what it's like. If it felt like chess.
Yeah, I mean, he won a ton of money and then got ostracized for good reason.
Seems
Well,
like a fair exchange.
So for mixed games, the reason like some of them might be fundamentally solved, but we don't have access to that information, kind of, right? And also lack of information in some spots.
I imagine there's mixed game solvers out there.
There is, because
I mean,
was talking about how he was the best at Badoogie, and then two people came out with a solver, and they're miles ahead of him now. But like, yeah.
But
there definitely is.
solver doesn't have. Oh, it does have perfect information based off of your hand and the probability of them either drawing or not drawing.
Yeah,
right?
if you're talking about like stud-based games, like the up cards are known similar to community boards or whatever, and everything just comes down to an EV calculation. Like even Fantasyland OpenFace, it didn't take a fucking rocket scientist to build an EV calculator for, what's the most optimal move.
Right.
So I imagine that's probably like the framework to operate off of, right? The difference being that there are no betting rounds in OFC. It's just a point-based system. Whereas in like 7-card games, there's 6 streets of betting or 7 streets of betting, whatever, that change things a little bit, but they're fixed. So you can almost treat it as like a point-based game to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, all these games are super interesting, and it's nice that there's not perfect-ish information, because people would ask me from other games, call it like chess, even backgammon, because for backgammon you get a rating as well, because like what's your rating versus the computer, and like what's your error mistakes, where people would say, oh, like is there an elo system in poker? And I'm like, God, no. Like, thank God there's no poker elo system.
Right.
Imagine if you were playing versus someone that had like a 2400. It's like, why would I want to ever put myself in this
we
spot?
can kind of intuit that exists, but yeah, I mean, I think that people try too hard to force the comparison between poker and chess.
Yeah.
There's such a desire for a scoring system that will allow us to basically say like, okay, unequivocally, this person is the best, this person is average, and this person is a huge loser. And really the only thing we can go off of is win rate.
Is that just like based off of people's call it proclivity to put things in the boxes and like rank themselves amongst their peers?
Regardless of where you fall on the spectrum of call it logic and rationality, even if you understand the world is very gray and that we're operating on a black and white spectrum where we're mostly functionally in the gray, we still have a desire to gravitate towards those ends, right? We still have a desire to put everything into a black or white box and just say like, okay, I have confidence in this. We don't think in confidence intervals, right? But that's the way the world works. We want to be 100% confident, or the irony is like, I don't think anybody is 0% confident in anything, right? Like, so it's this weird scale that's either I know this for a fact, or I partially know this because I'm arrogant and egotistical enough to not allow myself to say I don't know anything, right? But the truth of the matter is like most everything that we do, barring it having strict answers the way that I guess chess does with perfect information, nothing is really going to fit into that always or never type of category. So yeah, I think to your point, like we want to be able to look at the field and just put them in rank order and say, okay, from top to bottom, here's the top 100 players, here's the bottom 100 players. But like sports are like this too. It's also what makes them so magical. If we could just look at sports and say like, okay, here are the quarterbacks ranked 1 through 32, and this is empirical fact. This isn't my subjective bias. This isn't like based off of what I've observed. This is just like absolute fact. There's no debating it.
Based off of an overall system
Right.
of, like, call it vision,
whatever the ELO score would be for quarterbacks,
Right.
you know, and it's like whether you want to rank it today or rank it 30 years from now, it's still going to be this 1 through 32 order.
That's kind
That'll
of
just never
Moneyball-
happen.
That's kind of what Moneyball was sort of trying to do, but
No.
just from a run perspective.
No, Moneyball put EV on runs, and they were able to categorically, you know, box people in certain ways where they're either going to be slightly higher or slightly lower EV based off of average. And the sabermetrics grew off of that, WAR and all these other statistics that have come out where we can try to measure the value of a player. But nothing is anywhere remotely close to perfect. It's much closer to what we see in poker and solver study than it is what we see in chess with ELO score.
Yep.
Right? And I think that that's a good thing.
I think so too.
It creates parity. It creates interest. It creates a lack of ceiling, at least in our eyes, right? The ceilings may be there, but we're less aware of them because so much is out of our control.
It's also not as palatable if every time, like, you're supposed to play, they call it the main, right? It's a $10 tournament, and you take some sort of strategy test, and when you buy in, they say, oh, are you sure you want to buy in? Your win rate is negative 20%.
Correct.
Which means you're going to get $8,000 back from this
Right.
$10,000. It's like, well, like, I'd rather go to dinner instead.
Right. Or if they just like hit with the probability of like, okay, 1 in 15 people cash this event, but you actually are only going to cash 1 in 50, and the likelihood of you making the final 9 is 1 in a million. Most people are going to pull their 10K back.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like it's what allows the game to persist in the way that it is. It's what allows it to grow. Everybody has the ability to, especially now, right? Like before, it required a certain aptitude. You had to have a certain sense for games, like what I was talking about with Jay and Connect 4.
Right. You can extrapolate that anywhere. Like, Jason's just good at games.
He just has a good game sense and the ability to kind of like look at the board and reverse engineer what makes most logical sense, but what's most rational in a winning strategy, right?
Yep.
So you needed that card sense, that aptitude before to become a gambler, but you don't have to start from that base any longer. Don't get me wrong. You're ahead. Yeah, it helps if you do, but everybody has the capacity now to buy a GTO Wizard subscription and start from fucking scratch and just figure out where the heuristics come from in game theory. You know, studying it from the absolute base of the mathematical model and working your way up.
Do you think it's easier if somebody had experience, call it maybe 5 years of experience, call it Black Friday era, and then jumped back into poker versus like a new kid that had zero?
I would take the new kid.
New kid, right?
I would take a blank slate in their 20s over a conditioned rogue old school gambler.
Like experience
100
type.
out of 100. Yeah.
Because experience can be learned over time, where you can also still learn technicalities.
Probably learned a lot of things, did a lot of things wrong, and
Poorly.
it's ingrained into them, and
Correct.
it's hard to reverse that back. Whereas,
Almost
right.
all the things that make good gamblers make them very poor poker players. And I mean that in a technical sense. I don't mean that in the ability to win, right? So if you're talking about, if you're giving me the option of you can have this 35-year-old who grew up pre-Black Friday, took a decade off, and, you know, built some really sharp live skills. And
I call it winning player that like took a break. Right?
Yes. So you can have him and you can attempt to get him into high stakes, no limit live, or you can have a blank slate 25-year-old who's never really learned the game and you can attempt to get him into high stakes live. I would take the gambler because he's going to have all the soft skills necessary to not only allow him to have staying power in these games, but to be able to allow him to develop a winning strategy off of this stuff and keep it hidden to a certain degree from the pool, right? Where the young 25-year-old, it's going to be very difficult for me to develop both his poker IQ and his poker EQ at the same time. So that blank slate doesn't work. But if you're asking me which one I want to try to scale in high stakes in general, be it MTTs or online, it's going to be the young kid 100% of the time because the EQ is meaningless.
Yep.
You don't need any of the fucking soft skills in either of those environments.
At what point do you think EQ is an added skill in the sense of something that if people are looking to pursue poker professionally, I'm assuming more so now because online is kind of becoming apocalyptic, where it's almost like I'd rather take the person with more EQ than IQ at this specific point because you can teach someone poker skill and strategy, where EQ seems like it's a lot more, I mean, it's learned. You can learn how to become better
Harder,
at EQ.
Yeah.
But some people might be more naturally talented in an EQ sense.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think I think the things with the highest win rate are the areas that require the most EQ.
Right, the ability to get into the biggest game and like stay in the biggest
anything
game.
soft. Anything soft is going to provide the highest win rate, and it's soft because it's protected. It's keeping out the highest IQ players.
It's gate kept.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you become the highest IQ player in that pool? Well, it's you have the highest EQ to hide your IQ.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's just kind of the game, right? And really, what it comes down to is the difference between being cooperative versus being, EV driven and all for one, right? Type of mentality.
Right,
so,
like kind of sacking some spots because you know you're losing some dollars, but it's going to keep you staying in the game.
Yeah, maybe not even sacking, just more so just choosing a slightly smaller size where the EV differential isn't great, but the loss rate for the fish is going to be significantly
right,
less.
like not overbetting in a spot or jamming for 3x pot.
Yeah, potentially. Or, even just being able to suss out people that are damaging to the environment, like being able to police those situations.
Yeah, it's cool because when it comes to the EQ sense of it all, what I've recently sort of experienced in my own like personal type of stuff when it comes to, call it the private game scene, call it like being friends with other people that like aren't poker players but love playing poker. Some people don't care if they lose to you if they like you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Precisely.
If you can be someone that you can win and there's like, oh, like, okay, I like they make me try to play better, like they answer my questions if I have them, like there's certain ways that you can kind of still have a win rate while being a net positive to a game, not from a dollar standpoint.
Yeah, what I find to be true, and you guys can kind of speak to this as well, people react to competition in very different ways. But the thing that I find to be consistently true is that people don't mind a competitive environment if they think they have a chance to win. So I'm a highly, highly competitive individual, and I don't hide it, right? Like, I'm not one to kind of reel it in and, tap the table and say, like, great hand, man. That was a hell of a bluff. Like, you're the best kind of thing. Like, I'm hyper competitive, but I play in a manner where everybody that I'm playing against thinks that they can get me, right? And to some degree they can, right? Like, my swings are huge in both directions compared to the pool. Like, if the average standard deviation in my game is like 5K, mine's probably 30, right?
Yeah.
So it's like that in and of itself represents opportunity to the pool itself, right? Like, even if they are losing over the long run to me, which maybe they are, maybe they aren't, it's hidden in the swings.
Right. It's like I'm stuck 30, but Matt's coming to play.
Exactly.
So I could be up 80.
Exactly. 100%. So even though I'm hyper competitive and I'm leading with that, right? I'm leading with the fact that I'm trying really hard to not just win, but to fucking bury you at all costs. It's reciprocated by other people that are competitive and even people that may not be competitive because they think like, oh, well, I'll just wait them out.
Well, this kind of has to deal with the EQ as well, because I'm sure like there's some people you play against that don't like that in some instances.
Yeah, of course. You don't want to be abrasive, you know? You never want to be like over the top. There's certain people in the game that like I spar with all the time and like we have verbal jabs back and forth. And there are other people that like I just smile and, tap the table kind of thing because it just serves everyone better. To have like good decorum with people that would be off put by anything like verbally aggressive, right?
Right. That's part of the EQ of navigating environments and like navigating
reading the room and
it's like
understanding the situations, right?
It's like you're playing an 8-handed table. You're not playing 1 versus 8. You're playing 1 versus 1 8 times.
Correct.
In either poker or in an EQ sense, right? It's like, okay, versus this person, like they do something stupid. It's like, okay, like you can talk back and forth. Someone else, like, better.
Yeah.
And just kind of trial and error.
And it's it's so slow. So like how the conversation moves and, you know, the way that these interpersonal relationships form, it's very much like a Big Brother type game show or Survivor or whatever. Survivor is, I think, a great example, right? Because you see success from all different types of personality types, right? It's not just the super cooperative guy who goes in there and pats everyone on the ass that always wins. Sometimes it's like the overly aggressive militant guy that comes in there and right? It's just all about figuring out how to navigate this like level of both, you know, potentially being the alpha leader versus like one of the one of everybody type of things. And poker is no different, especially in the live sense, because you guys are willingly exchanging money, you know, over long days and hours where gambling is at the forefront, but there's just infinite downtime. So it's like a lot of times the competitive back and forth is in a way very disarming to the people that are less competitive because it's happening between maybe some of the stronger players in the game.
Most of the time, you're not even gambling. You're sitting at the table and folding.
Right.
You know, so it's just about like how you kind of make the game fun, not only for yourself, but to keep everyone else entertained as well.
Like when recreationals come and show up and like maybe they're on the tighter side and they just don't play many hands and they see two of the stronger players like verbally sparring and then trading back and forth huge pots. That's what they came for. That's entertaining to them.
Yeah.
They're happy to like buy a ticket to that.
Right. It's like sometimes people want to just like be around the arena and not in it.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, they're in it.
Sure.
They're just, you know, in it 10 blinds at a time instead of, you know, 10 stacks at a time.
Yeah.
And that's okay too. I don't know. I think like ultimately this is what makes live so healthy by comparison to online. And I think the trickiest part about it is that so much of this is gate kept. Like this used to be the way the public sector worked, right? Like you could just go to Bellagio or, you know, the Venetian or the Wynn and play an uncapped 5-10 all the way up to, you know, 100, 200
You can
game.
show up at the biggest game and play if there's a seat for you.
Right. And the most annoying thing was just like waiting on lists, right?
No, you can't even get in those games.
Right. Now those games are very gate kept. And it's like, I understand I'm speaking from a point of privilege, like because I have access, but I recognize how tough it is for people who are like coming up. And what I realize is like the people that break through and get the opportunity are the ones that are very gregarious, understand how to read a room, understand how to fit in, and understand how to mask, you know, the EV that they may be pulling out of the game.
Well, in some sense, that might not even be from a luck-based standpoint, right? So especially if you're getting into poker now, knowing that this stuff is important for live, it seems like it's not that big of a secret that people that are more socially out there get more opportunity.
You know, I think part of it is luck-based just in the sense of it's only the genuine ones that have any staying power. Like, I haven't seen anybody who tries to manufacture this type of EQ ever last. They kind of just get sussed out very quickly.
Because it's disingenuous.
Right.
It doesn't. You can just feel the fakeness of it.
Right. Like the person who shows up with like having read, you know, the book of questions and
how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah. And they're literally just like reading off of a script. It's like you only have to play a dozen hours with them before you realize the shtick.
Right.
And then notice that they're also V-pipping 12%.
Right.
It's like, okay, I mean, you suck.
They're fish at EQ. You know, sharpen IQ, fish EQ.
Right.
You're out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like nice try.
You voted off the island.
It doesn't take long to figure that out.
Right. And the other thing is like the majority of the games are actually built off of other high EQ individuals that are just like, you know, not as sharp when it comes to IQ. Like if we can get a game with 8 Conrads and me, we're talking fucking business, baby.
Actually, and the funny part about it is the person with the high IQ is immediately going to pick EQ is immediately going to pick up on it.
Yeah,
and that's usually whatever.
Yeah. Like they usually have good reads on the person that's, you know, faking their way through.
It's so funny how many times I've been at a table and that person that's faking their way through just gets called out by like the drunk guy that's like just having a blast, but he's smart. Right. He understands what's going on.
You're speaking from experience?
What?
No, you're the drunk guy at the table. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, obviously sometimes, but like, you know, I'm talking about the other guy now.
Yeah.
You know, like the 65-year-old Asian man that's just been having a great time, this fucking bawling, and then he's like, I'm not fucking playing with you.
Right. Like, like legit, Conrad can play as tight as he fucking wants in any game that he plays because he brings so much to the environment. You know what I mean? Like
not wrong.
he's just never going to be putting on a front. He's the kind of guy that you build a meetup game around.
Right.
And it's like that's the core of the type of people that you want in your game. At the end of the day, a lot of these games that are gatekept, they're not gatekept for people who are only going to VPIP over 35%, right? No, it's an eclectic mix. There's plenty of room for people to play tight when they bring other things to the table, when they're pleasant conversation, when they keep the energy high, when they do, randomly pop off here and there in the stand-up game or 7 deuce or whatever. Like,
Right.
you don't care if they come to the game and you look at them and you say like they're a net small winner or a small loser. It's like, okay, well, you're still important.
Right. It's always it's more macro than micro for sure. Where it's like, okay, I can't know how much you're winning from a game because you're never gonna get the sample, but I know how much of a good time or bad time you bring to the environment.
Right.
Where you might have someone that VPIPs 100%, but acts like a dick to everybody. It's like, okay, we just can't have you in the game.
Yeah.
You can't stay here.
Nobody wants
If
that
you
person.
100%, you'll find a way.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but like even though it's like, you know what, nobody likes you.
There's
There's a lot of times that person gets
That's
voted
okay
out.
too, though.
Yeah,
you
no,
might get
that is
you
true.
might get the play, you might get shit talked behind your back. There's always plus and
it's
minuses.
okay too because like, I mean, there's this competitive spirit. There's a handful of special players, VIPs, whatever you want to call them, that
Action gamblers.
The
that when-
Santosh's of the world.
No.
he's a
Santosh
legend.
Santosh
Santosh
is
is
a
the man.
unicorn. He is an absolute unicorn. No, but there's like this other subsection where, amongst the regs, we just kind of say like, oh my God, I'd rather have like literally another reg than this guy because like they play super tight and they're dicks and this other stuff. But at the end of the day, like when you take that exact same personality and they play a lot of hands, the conversation shifts from I'd rather have another reg than this guy to like this guy sucks.
Man,
but
it's so
Yeah,
interesting. It is
right.
very interesting in the game politics of how much is somebody giving up in, call it dollar amounts, to make the game run versus how pleasant are they to be around.
Right. What Berkey's saying is there isn't a dollar amount where that doesn't matter.
yeah,
Right. So it's like if they're giving up enough dollars, they can do whatever the hell they want.
yeah, that's simply it.
Right.
How do you take that to a sense of not having some form of, I don't know if it's favoritism is the right word, where it's like people want to do more because they do this. So it's like, oh, I know you need me for this game.
Yeah, it's
Like
tough.
leveraging that.
Right, it's tough to juggle, right? Like this is something that it's a conversation I've had with dozens of regs throughout the years because when you're lucky enough to have the privilege to sit these games, you have to understand that there's a fair value exchange, right? But oftentimes, what happens is the game runners will kind of get drunk with power and realize that they're gatekeeping the most coveted prize of all, which is a soft game at high stakes. And they forget how critical the core group of, higher EQ, lower IQ people are to the game. Like the people who are bringing in the biggest influx of money are going to be regs, not necessarily recs. The people who are losing the biggest influx of money will be the recs, of course, but they're not consistent. They're not in town all the time. They're only able to go off for a few days at a time. They have jobs, they have families, they have lives, right?
Yeah, like you said, Bellagio summer's over.
Right, yeah. So it's mostly core regs now. And what I'm saying with that is that, from my vantage point, it's like I do everything I possibly can to provide any game that I play in a ton of value. If I can bring a fun player, I'll bring a fun player. If I can bring a fun environment, I'll make the environment fun. If me sitting deep makes the game good, then I'll sit deep. If me sitting shallow makes the game feel more comfortable for the players in it, then I'll sit shallow. Like, I don't care. I'm willing to bend to the environment and offer the needs. But it's really easy to take that for granted, right? Because being like me consistently showing up, me consistently doing all the little things necessary to make sure that the game is good, me consistently putting myself in harm's way potentially in some small EV spots so that the fun players are having a good experience and giving them a shot and everything else. The things that lead to the recreationals going to the game runner and saying like, I don't care who else comes, but I want Berkey there. Those are the things that I offer as value, but they're very easy to overlook because I look like I'm replaceable with a half dozen, if not a dozen other regs, right?
Well, that's what makes you different than other people, is because once you kind of realize, okay, I can, you're replaceable, and then you realize after a very short amount of time that you're not replaceable.
Well, that's the thing. I'm not even just saying specifically me, but there's
Sure,
like
just
a core group of regs that are always going to make up these games.
The archetype.
Yeah, and it's like once you start plucking them out one by one, offering favor elsewhere, what you end up seeing is now this big divergence between vultures and fun players.
Vulture 1, Vulture 2.
Right. You just end up with vultures and fun players, and that's like the worst fucking kind of environment because now the recreationals are hyper aware that they're drawing dead.
Right.
And they don't like it. You know, they just recognize.
That's the opposite of how to win friends and influence people.
Yeah. They just recognize that 4 vultures sat who usually sit with a minimum buy-in, but because they have their left, they just bought him for 100K and their VPIP is still single digits.
These are very clearly the soft skills that some people, I don't know if it's overlook or don't know, right? It's just a matter of.
Some of it's just natural. Some of it's experience, I think. If I wasn't from pre-Black Friday era, I don't know that I would be able to do any of this stuff. Well, I'm not naturally an extrovert, and you know, if I learned the game through the lens of EV, it'd be very difficult for me to frame out a world where it makes a lot of sense for me to VPIP Queen 7 suited under the gun 9-handed.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of getting into the conversation of like why when some call it the whole like cardinal rules of like not talking strat at a table, especially when you're looking at more of like the younger online kind of crew, where it's like, oh, like doesn't everybody know this? And then you realize very quickly, no.
The funny part is, speaking from my own personal experience, all of those cardinal rules that are in place for vultures. I break every one of them.
Yeah.
I openly talk strat with the recreationals all the time because they want to. They are just as curious as everybody else about the game.
Yeah, it's like, what did you have? Or like, can I raise this? Or...
Right, of course. They are constantly trying to learn and they constantly want, and you should spoon feed them as much as they're willing to take in because it's not going to make them that much better. It certainly isn't going to make them that much more aware of like how much they're giving up, but it's going to make their experience that much more enjoyable, and they're just going to feel like they walked away with some other intrinsic value.
Right. Like
if you get to watch a mechanic do his job all day long, you'd rather be able to ask questions than not.
Right.
Yeah, these are smart people. They feel like they learned something.
Right. Well, you do learn, hopefully, like you learn something for a price, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, can I, like they lose a hand, but it's like, oh, like do you think I can fold river? And in a spot, it's like, oh, like maybe you can, maybe you can't.
Right.
Right. But even if they didn't get the outcome they wanted, they got something to take away from that. Where the difference is when like Vulture 1, Vulture 2 overbets a turn and gets called by a hand that should fold, and then like they end up sucking out on Vulture 1, and then they get pissed. It's like, you can't call the turn with that shit.
Right.
And like now you're just making somebody feel bad.
Yeah, now it turns into like a parent-child type of exchange,
right?
Rather than just, you know, potentially two peers. And I think ultimately that's the goal, is you want them to feel like they're your peer, even if like that's not the way that you two were introduced to one another, right? And I think that you know, kind of the aspect of like what you're saying of they want to learn something at the price, like that's why they're in this game, is to pay the price or whatever. I think something that's naturally overlooked by people who feel very protective of the fortunate situation they find themselves in is trying to put a glass case over it and making sure that it never changes, right? So they try to get like hyper vigilant about no one talking strat, about nobody.
Right, so you say something in the eyes, like, how dare you?
Right, like nobody, you know, using poker vernacular at the table, like keeping everything dumbed down and all this other stuff. And it's like, these guys aren't that stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're trying to protect yourself, or if you're trying to protect the game to that degree, just know that they're going to go to outside sources and get it. At least if you hear the conversation amongst you, you can anticipate some potential changes down the line.
Right. It's not like a rich guy that wants to get better won't just pay someone for coaching as is.
Right. Right. And
they're just paying you in the moment.
Yeah. And that's way better because you now get to filter the information that's getting leaked out, and you kind of get to anticipate how they're going to digest that information, how they might potentially correct down the line. And, you know, you can kind of evolve together. You just continually move together. If you don't do that, then they show up 3 months later and suddenly they're, you know, overbetting turns at a reasonable frequency and doing all this other stuff. What ends up happening, and I've seen this happen a lot, is the runners will say, he's not actually a recreational. He's out.
He's a super pro.
Yeah. He's a super pro disguised as a rec. He's out. Like, he's not good for the game anymore. He's out. And like, that's the thing. If you would have just let him naturally evolve alongside with you, you would have continually corrected as he corrected, and you would still see him for what he is.
Right.
A competitive rec.
There's also just there's also that value you might learn where if someone's have that conversation with you, like, oh, like I wouldn't have called this bet, but I would have called this bet. Right? Like maybe you actually get more information out of talking in the first place because you realize, oh, like this bets will overperform versus other sizings. And then like you kind of get some value back for yourself in that way too. It's not like the immediate reason why you do it,
Right.
but it's kind of like a secondary or like tertiary benefit to just having that conversation where if somebody wanted to, it's like losing players know they're losing.
I just
Most of the time.
Look, I love DGAF. I've known him since 2008, but he's always been a hardcore proponent of don't talk strat at the table, drink, keep the wells, gambling, yada yada yada, and like training sites are bad and all this other stuff. And it's like I get it, and that was definitely true at some point in time, right? It was for sure a secret society of people that were getting good at the game and never letting the public know.
Right, like getting good was a off the table type of activity.
Yeah. But now we're in a world where the information is freely available. Everybody's hyper aware that it exists, and nobody is putting in as much effort as the winners. So at the end of the day, the irony is that the people who are so strongly advocating for this behavior to cease are also the people that are condemning the young up-and-comers for giving nothing back to the environment.
Right.
And it's like, truthfully, some of the things that they could give back in the easiest, most palatable way is just casual conversation about the game.
Literally strategy. Like, I've been fortunate enough to get a spot where they literally told me, it's like, look, we know you're good at poker, but like we just want to learn from you. And like we're willing to get better.
And it's not even like framing it as strategy feels like it's so like
secret.
No, it's more like teacher-student type thing. I see it more as like tips and tricks. Like if I went fishing, I know how to catch fish. I've fished a bunch in my life, but I'm by no means good. I'm certainly not a professional at it. I'm not that great. If I get to go fishing with like, somebody who's on the pro bass tour and I just got to fish with him all day casually, we're both just enjoying an activity.
Yeah.
And we're shooting the shit about fishing.
Yeah.
Because we have this shared interest. And he's just casually working in things that, allowed him to get really good at what he does.
Yep.
I'm going to pick up on a handful of them. I'm going to misapply a handful of others. But I'm going to start thinking about it, and I'm going to start, like, seeing fishing through the lens that he sees fishing.
Yeah, it's kind of like
I'm not going to become him.
Right.
It's a value trade, right? Where maybe you just say, like, oh, you want to go fishing? Like, I'll rent out a boat.
Right.
Or whatever. It's like, okay, like, now he's getting paid for, like, free fishing and, like, talks to you, and, like, he gets to go on a boat and do fishing stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to become a professional overnight. You're just shooting the shit over a common interest.
Yeah, he's not worried about, oh, man, this guy's going to take my spot on the pro bass tour.
Right.
He's like, I'm here to fish with this bro.
This isn't just unique to poker.
No.
I was watching an interview with Barry Bonds. He never does interviews, but he did a podcast a couple weeks ago. I can't remember which one it was. And he was talking about how hated he was in the locker room. Like, everybody just thought he was a bad teammate. And he was basically saying, like, well, they thought I was a bad teammate because I kind of kept to myself. And when they wanted to talk baseball, I just wouldn't do it. He's like, I don't know when we're going to not be teammates anymore. I'm not going to. He's like, I did it one time. I talked about a certain pitch that was beating me. And a few months later, that guy was on the other team. And sure enough, I got beat by that pitch. Yeah. He's like, never again. And it's like, I get it. Yeah, I get it. But it's like, you're Barry fucking Bonds.
Yeah.
I have a psychological profile on you, Matt.
Go on.
I have this all figured out.
Okay. I can't wait.
Bro moved his headphones up for this, too.
Yeah, hold on. Let's put the camera on me. I got this all broken down.
you get to do
I
that.
saw my,
Here's
here's my,
like-
my psych profile on Matthew Berkey.
He's got the Matrix, like he has the monitors behind him.
The reason you're introverted, buddy, is because you're too goddamn competitive. Now,
Okay.
I was a first-hand person who experienced this.
Okay.
When we were in the Bahamas, we were just dinking back and forth in the living room. Just like, hey, this is fun. Like, I'm hanging out with Matt, and we're just dinking in the living room. And at one point, I put up a dink just a little too high.
I hope he hit you in the face for that.
Do you think he fucking just gingerly dinked it back at me?
Fuck no, he's
No.
supposed to ruin you.
He spiked the shit out of this ball and went whistling by my ear. And I'm like, oh, like, clearly this guy just has an on and an off switch as far as, like, being competitive. So
I was showing you what you're supposed to do with a hanger.
You should have
I will
punished
never
him.
dink that high again.
And you learned.
Exactly. I was gonna say you should punish him by hitting him with the ball.
That's how I learned, Conrad.
I'm well aware. how
Trial
you
by
learned.
fire.
I was the one hitting you.
Yeah. Oh my God. You're the worst. Yeah. I mean, if I didn't hit it hard there, you wouldn't even know that shot was an option.
Yeah. Well, I learned.
Sometimes the only way to learn is the hard way.
That's
For
right.
you, it was maybe getting hit. For some people in poker, it's money. For other people in other instances,
Yeah.
it's other forms
A lot of paid lessons out there.
Right. There's other forms of payment than just money.
Yeah. Yeah, there's value trades. We need to go back to the barter system, back the way it used to be in the caveman days.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is, but then the vultures start vulturing.
That's right. There's always going to be a vulture
Keep the
out
vultures out.
It's kind of funny that you're right. The rules are for the vultures.
there. 100%.
Yeah.
It's that it's an infinite game environment that people with finite mindsets play. So
Right. It's like, don't get good too fast. I'm gonna lose money.
people who are capable of policing the game need to be those with the infinite game mindset, because they're going to be able to mitigate the vultures, the finite game mindset people, you know what I mean? Kind of
Yeah.
move the pieces in such a way so that even though there are finite minds in there, it's still an infinite game.
Right. The finite people get plucked out of the environment
Well-
most times.
Well, not necessarily. They're just forced to cooperate, right? Because it's the difference between a competitive and a cooperative environment.
Right. The finite
People with finite
person-
mindsets are very competitive. People who understand that it's an infinite game will lend themselves to cooperation.
You can be both at the same time.
Right. And those are the ones that last.
Right. Because if you're trying to like weasel your way in through the finite way, it's like, oh, you're doing what's good for you, not the environment. The
Yeah.
environment is going to be fed up with that at some point.
At some point. Yeah.
You gotta get the weasels out.
You got to get them out. You got to get them out, send them to England with Chauncey. Chauncey will handle all the weasels.
This weasel's going to Florida.
When do you leave?
I leave tonight.
Okay.
You gone.
Well, it's been
Man,
nice. It's been nice
Nice
having
seeing
you
you
back.
back. Having
Dude,
you back. Yeah.
I need to clone myself because I like being here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I like being here, but I also want to go to Florida. There's tournaments, and then
Sure.
I'm gonna go on a cruise with my mom.
Aw,
That's
Marnie and
adorable.
Landy going on a cruise.
That is fucking
So
adorable.
cute.
Yeah, I could have
Yeah.
picked many people. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna pick my mom.
Aw.
I love you, Mom.
Man. Shout out to Landon's mom.
Yeah, you know it's
And
fucking.
Petunia.
You know it's fucking Henry's name on WSOP.
Landon's mom.
It's Landon's mom.
I
I
saw
love
that name. I didn't know who it was.
Yeah, it's
Wait.
button clicker.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's
amazing.
fucking hilarious.
It's fucking
I just see
hilarious.
a. Fuck, where's he from? Where's he from? Finland.
One of the Norwegian.
He's from no, not Norway.
One
Yeah.
of the Norwegian countries you were about to
One
say?
of the Scandinavian countries.
Scandinavian.
I think it's Finland, and it just says Landon's mom, like playing like 50-100, and like
You love to see it.
maybe one day,
You love to see it.
maybe one day she will.
All right, we're gonna be back tomorrow. I think we're gonna go back to the noon time slot starting tomorrow, and then adjust accordingly for the days that I play Bellagio, which means there will be some 10 a.m.s, possibly some 6 p.m.s. We'll see how it all goes out or shakes out. Quick reminder: we do have an academy coming up September 1st. We have a few seats available for that still. If you guys are interested, head over to academy.solveforwhy.io. That's a 3-day academy, September 1st to the 3rd. The mornings will be dedicated to strategy construction. The evenings dedicated towards gameplay on an RFID table, where we do commentary in the back and let you know what you're doing well and what you're doing poorly. That's going to do it for us. There'll be a new episode of On Second Thought out, I believe, next week. We're going to work on getting that out for you next Monday. So if you guys are interested in seeing all 9 seasons of Poker Out Loud, as well as the accompanying show On Second Thought, head over to solveforwhy.io. Sign up today. We'll be back tomorrow and the rest of the week. Less one Landon. We'll see you guys then.
Later, squad.
Peace, you guys.